Alright everybody, it's time to talk about Trump's reaction to the Syria stuff in the wake actually of Ambassador Haley, Nikki Haley of course, weighing in on that, saying, oh well, the United States, if the UN doesn't act, if these other various powers don't do anything about this, we may be forced towards unilateral action. Trump has now come out and given his own statement, in which he says, oh yeah, I've changed my mind on Syria. This is after years ago saying we shouldn't be involved in Syria, we should do our own thing, and the situation is probably better handled by the Russians. Now he appears to have forgotten that fact, and I think he's making a bit of a tactical blunder here because very few people voted for Trump to start a war. And a lot of people will drop him faster than a log of shit from Andy Sick's asshole if he actually decides to bring us into a land war in Syria. Now, we've got to wait until we see what his suggested response is. If it's any permutation of fuck over Assad's forces, when people still remember, oh yeah, it was our involvement that put pressure on Assad in the first place, then it's going to be a problem. It's like these barrel bombs people talk about. The reason why the rather indiscriminate barrel bombs were being used in the first place by some of Assad's forces is they ran out of munitions because we kept funding and arming the FSA, making life a living hell for his forces. So the civil war never actually ended. You've got ISIS in some areas, you've got the FSA in others, you've got Kurdish separatists in others, and they're all sort of trying to attack Assad's forces at the same time. Yeah, eventually he's going to run out of actual usable weapons. He had to make a phone call to Tehran, get the Iranians involved along with the Russians. And that wouldn't have happened if we had just stepped back and said, well, Assad is ultimately at this point, once ISIS began to move in, ultimately he's the lesser of two evils. And he is. DC can say the FSA is some great thing. They're really just nationalists that like Sharia. They want Syria to be like any other randomly selected sovereign but ultimately Islamo-fascist nation. Severe oppression, deep third world, no human development, a handful of people do very well, you know, the clerical class, and whatever monarchy springs up, everybody else is suffering in deep poverty. That's what they want. They want it to be like rural Saudi Arabia or something like that, or parts of Libya now under ISIS. The difference, of course, is the FSA that we favored were nationalist Sharia law lovers. They wanted sovereignty for Syria, as opposed to being part of this caliph system. That's the only difference. What did ISIS want? ISIS is like, oh, we're going to erase the national borders. They're almost globalists. They say, we're going to erase these national borders, make one giant caliph and control all the oil, and then Islam will rule the world. We'll export mosques for oil sales. Well, Saudi Arabia already does that, and they want national sovereignty because the House of Saud knows full well if they deal directly with groups like ISIS, they're going to get beheaded or something like that. The difference between the FSA and ISIS is slight. Same tactics, same fundamental strategy, same bone to pick with Assad. The only difference is one of them believes Syria should continue to exist. The other one wants it rolled up with at least Iraq, creating a local caliph state, and then eventually further creating one that's larger. I don't believe in involvement in Syria by our U.S. armed forces. I don't want to see another Iraq. And I thought Trump was wise enough to understand the problems with fucking around in this region. So if he decides to get us directly involved, there are several levels at which he can do that. One would be a ground invasion. That'd be the worst possibility. Another would be scaling up the drone strikes we're already conducting. It wouldn't do any good, but at the very least, it's not bogging us down in a war that is quite costly in terms of lives and money. I'd still oppose it, but at the very least, I suppose there's a silver lining. Best case scenario is this is largely bluster. People forget about it. This is, I don't know, to appease the war hawk neocons or something, and then he forgets about it afterwards. But I would be extremely concerned if we deepen our involvement in Syria, especially because Russia's already there. The Russians are already on the ground and in the air around Syria. What are we supposed to do in coordinating with them? After the Democratic Party especially has pissed away all leverage with Russians in terms of diplomacy, what are we supposed to do? Risk World War III over Damascus? Over Aleppo? Does this sound sane to you? It doesn't sound sane to me. I think it's rather dangerous. Other day I read, I believe it was Business Insider, they had a headline, "Oh, Trump risking World War III over China and the East, the South China Sea and the Spratly Islands and crap like that," which is kind of true and kind of not. Of course, their hyperbole is completely false. It's literally fake news. The essence of it is technically true. It could cause a world war situation if we continue what we're doing. I see the other day that it's China that's going to be World War III. That our perturbations with them over this maritime territory they do not essentially control, but they claim anyway, that's going to cause it. Now all of a sudden it looks like it's going to be Syria again. Back into the Middle East we go. Have we not learned our lesson after time and time again waging these retarded proxy wars in the region? I was against the idea of striking Assad's forces when Obama suggested it. I thought it was a bad idea then, and I think it's a bad idea now. No, I think we should leave Assad alone. Because these pictures of gassed children don't prove to me anything in terms of who actually gassed them. It just proves to me that they're dead. That's all it shows me. It shows me there are dead children in Syria. What's the difference between them getting hit by a barrel bomb or getting raped to death by an ISIS member and them getting nerve gassed? What's the difference? There is none. Nobody can tell me any difference other than, oh, WMDs were deployed. Yes, all of Syria is a WMD at this point. Everybody there is at hazard of dying on a constant basis. It doesn't even matter who they're fighting for. Assad himself's not safe. He probably sits there and occasionally he gets nervous that he's suddenly going to get bombed out of his mind. So try and tell me that we should get involved. You think we're going to get welcomed as liberators if we march into Syria? Or that us conducting more drone strikes or airstrikes or whatever the hell is going to be implemented now, that's going to help the situation? It'll probably make it worse. If we could help the situation by being involved, that'd be one thing. You could make a moral argument in favor of it. I don't think that it will. I think it'll be like Iraq, where supposedly, according to Netanyahu, the same kind of people that will profit off of the Syrian war if we get involved, according to all of these extreme warmongers in the Middle East. We're talking the Israeli government, the Saudi government. The Iranians probably would love us to get involved so they could take pot shots at us and blame ISIS for it or something. According to all these groups, we'll be welcomed as liberators. Assad is an evil dictator. He gasses people. Kind of like Saddam Hussein. I learned my lesson. I hope you did too. But that's never the way that it works out. We're never welcomed as liberators. We get conned into these crazy-ass wars. We get nothing from it. We get fucked. The nation gets fucked. Everyone else who encouraged us to go in sits back and laughs. And then they step in and they rob everything of these people. As for Trump's idea of just taking the oil, okay, that might have worked for Iraq. I don't think it's going to work for Syria so well. Yeah, not quite as much oil there to actually get some recompense for your actions there. Certainly not enough to justify full military maneuvers. No, I would, if Trump is seriously suggesting we march into Syria, I deeply oppose it. If he's suggesting ramping up our involvement in terms of airstrikes and drone strikes, I oppose it. Yes, it's feasible to do so without bringing us to the brink of human destruction, but I still oppose it on principle. If what he's suggesting is, oh, I'm going to hoodwink these neocons and pretend to be pro-war for a while, and then things will die down, they'll forget about it, and we'll just drop the issue. Okay, that's fine. I hope that's what he's doing. I really do. Because I don't want to immediately, I don't want to have to begin campaigning against Donald Trump. Because I predicted he'd win, and he did. I predicted in the primaries and the general. I have no problem with his domestic policy. People saying he's the next Hitler, they're fooling themselves. Most of his foreign policy is actually credible. But on this particular issue, there's no way I can possibly stand with him if he's suggesting that we should get involved further in Syria. It's impossible. It's a terrible idea. And it would largely, in fiscal and human misery terms, it would largely outweigh the good that he has been doing. Through the suggestions that he's made, through his suggestion to simplify the tax code, get our businesses going again. He was elected to focus on the U.S. economy, the border, things like that, not to fixate on Syria. And if he begins doing that for very long, He's going to piss off his core fans, and that's probably one of the few mistakes he could make that would bring him to the brink of impeachment, actually. These people claiming Trump's going to be impeached for trying to build a border wall, they're fucking retarded. But if he begins dicking around over in the Middle East and he looks more and more like W, yeah, that would become a risk. My sincere warning to him would be not to do that. From the standpoint of strategy, it's a terrible idea. It wouldn't matter. You can move in, immediately kill Assad, overthrow his government entirely, install a new one in 24 hours, so that it'd become almost bloodless. It wouldn't even matter. People still wouldn't support it. People have lost their favor for Middle Eastern proxy wars. They'd be more likely to support you on invading the DPRK at this point than dicking around in Syria. It's a terrible idea. If I were Trump, there's no way in hell you could get me to scale up U.S. involvement in the region. If anything, I'd be reducing involvement. I'd say, okay, no more drone strikes. We'll conduct a few airstrikes here and there maybe, and we'll, trump it up, literally, invisibility. But otherwise, we're going to leave the situation alone. Let Putin take care of it. About the only group of people that this stops, in terms of his critics, are really some of the partisan Clintonian Democrats. Because they're always talking about how he's some great friend sucking Putin's cock or something like that. Of course, now he's saying Russia's actions are unacceptable and their puppet in Syria has crossed several red lines. It's going to be kind of difficult for them to justify their Trump is a Russian puppet sort of bullcrap story. But then again, everyone who supports Trump, that whole 38% that likes what Trump's doing, none of them think that you're a Russian asset, Donald. You're not proving yourself to anybody else by doing this, if that's your strategy, to hardball the Russians for a few days. It's not going to win you any gratitude from the centrists. They'll look at it, they'll say, oh shit, he's another George W. Bush. We're about to go down a dark path. Their clamoring for impeachment will be, it'll be more visible. There'll be more marches, more protests. I may not join them because my hope is that you're not planning to actually invade Syria, but people are worried about that. They remember what Iraq was like during shock and awe. And can you blame them? Obama tried to lead us to war in Syria. His suggestion, if carried through, would have caused a war. His fans don't even realize it. They don't realize how lucky we were that public opinion was so dead set against it. So it really collapsed his support there for a while. It wasn't Obamacare. It was his suggestion that we should go to war in Syria that some people understood. They were intelligent enough to realize what his suggestion actually meant. If Trump suggests the same thing, he'll be at sub-30 approval. It's probably the worst idea he could possibly have. Now, the fact that I think that Trump is intelligent and sane means I don't think that's what he's suggesting. Let's hope that I'm right. Let's hope that I'm not wrong on this, because if he does, we're in for a bumpy road ahead. It's going to be a little more than a little problematic. That's about all. Peace out.